Good morning to all of you. Thanks to the organizers for taking me part of this. Let me congratulate the editors of the volume and all the contributors for this very refreshing piece of work. Though you would not have seen most of it, but Shambhu has given you an overview, and that tells us what is there inside this. And I have gone through the book, if I could get access to it somehow. Being more resourceful in terms of working at an institute which is more resourceful.
Actually, Shambhu, everybody is asking where do you get the book from and all that stuff. So I think you need to use that also somewhere.
So as you can see the schedule, we have 4 panelists, and they represent 2 individual case studies, individual FPO. Rather, I would say that this book is largely about farmer-producer companies. You may keep using this umbrella term of FPO. There's only one cooperative. Why don't we say, shamelessly I would say, that we are talking farmer-producer companies? Yeah? So we should not really try to say that no, it is all about this FPOs in general and all that. There's a clear movement as we are seeing across the country in terms of promoting certain kind of legal entities rather than all kinds. Therefore, I would say that the first 2 individual PC cases we will take up first, and then we have 2 federated producer companies again. In fact, when you were showing the performance of various PCs, I was saying say double counting. Krishidan could not have done much because Wipro took part of it as a kind of. So their profits are also determined by whether they are part of it or not, or the business volumes are also determined by that kind of arrangement. There are 2 such federated producer companies from Gujarat and Maharashtra. So I would reserve my comments toward the end because we are running late already. Without much delay, I would now request a star first, or maybe okay, to share with us their findings and insights on the performance of Krishida. Yeah? In terms of all the points Shambhu raised, the policy and impact and assessment and governance and so on. Yeah, whatever is relevant. Yes.
You gave me 5 minutes to share everything which we.
I have not specified the time. I have just asked to speak.
What is the time?
No, I will
speak for 5 minutes so that we may have another round. So the policy thing you can take up perhaps a bit later, and that would be the second round. Would be the design and all of that.
So how long we can?
I think we are running.
We can go up to what, 11:30 or?
Yeah,
started a bit late.
Longer.
We can go up to 11:45.
Okay, I think then you can even take 8 minutes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. That's a great call. Okay. See, all of you have been given a leaflet kind of thing on each of these cases in your handouts, and they follow a particular structure. So I am going to follow that structure. It would be nice if you could refer to it also. But before I get started, let me start by thanking Irma and Professor Shambhu to allow us to be part of this fantastic journey of 2 years, in which the journey itself was the destination for many of us. We learned a lot, we enjoyed numerous occasions where we interacted with each other. And each time we looked at our own case, we found new insights. So these organizations are so complex, they are so multidimensional. This is something which policymakers also need to realize, and somebody needs to tell them, because they tend to put everything into boxes and forget about the rest. So, and apart from that, I would like to thank DSC, Mr. Mohan Sharma, who is the director, and my colleague, who is also co-author, Sachin, who is the BSc Foundation's head. After this, I would like to start on saying something about Krishidan. I cannot do justice. It's such a wonderful enterprise which has been incubated over 6 years by DSC, and now it is on its own. For the last 2 years, it's been on its own, and it is able to meet its entire expenses, and therefore its head is above the water. But it is very ambitious. I don't know if Jaswant Bhai is here, the CEO. Would like to thank him also for various information and insights. So, if you look at this structure in the leaflet, it says, what was the conceptualization? And I would like to state, apart from whatever is given there, that conceptualization here on DHC's part was that they have worked with farming communities for so many years in building water systems, in risk management, and so many other areas. And yet farmers were saying, but our agriculture is going down, we are in a bad shape, farming is becoming unproductive, our children don't want to do it anymore. So why don't you help us in this critical area of livelihoods? And therefore, what they did was to adopt an area level approach for changing the situation in the entire area and changing agriculture to make it productive again and sustainable again. So that was a challenge, and that entire challenge would take a time frame of 10 years, in which first 3-4 years was building the base, the building blocks, and then incubation, and finally leading to an organization which would be very strong, with a strong foundation, and which would affect the entire socio-economic condition of the entire block. And to a large extent they have been successful. So this case offers a lot in terms of learning. So nature of the FPO, I would say, that I already said, targets an entire area. It is multi-community, and therefore it is inclusive. So OBCs and STs on one side, caste Hindus on the other side, and yet they are able to make it work together. It's inclusive in nature. Multi-location. So a big advantage of multi-location is farmers in one location can benefit farmers in another location. They can build on their strengths. Multi-commodity, and large volumes. This is what helps to break the stranglehold of the traders in the local area. If you are looking at only one commodity, it doesn't work. If you are looking at small volumes, it doesn't work. When you combine all of this, it breaks the stranglehold. The prices are dictated in the local economy by the FPO. That has a fantastic impact, I think, to my mind. Now, coming to business model. An insight here is, we have all, even in our discussions, people have been saying B2B, B2C, which is all borrowed from the corporate sector. To my mind, these complex organizations, these kind of simple jargons, it's oversimplification of the reality. So I'll give you a few examples from the value chains in which Krishidan is involved. First one, certified wheat seed production. Here, I would say, well, the business model is F to F, because wheat produced in one location is offered to farmers in another location. Both farmers make money out of the whole process. So it's a closed loop value chain. It's a fantastic thing for any regional. Oh, yeah. 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. I have only 2 points covered so far. So I'll leave the rest to the interaction.
I think giving seniority, you take more. We will.
No. That's
you're talking about now equitable and all that. What is senior junior?
Okay, minus 30 seconds. MSP of groundnut. I'll call it F to G because it went to government. Potato contract farming. F to B because it's the private company which is involved. Balaji. Then cattle feed production. F to FPO to B to F. So as you go, it becomes more and more complex, and one has to take note of this. Cattle feed, okay, I said that. Organic produce, F to C. So if we take into account all these things, you realize it's not as easy as it looks. Management and government challenges. I think this one is important. Let me finish it. In management, there are so many trade-offs that the board of director and the CEO together have to sit and sort out. Trade-offs between social benefits on one side and profitability on the other is the biggest challenge. So what we found is, if you take the ratio farmers benefit to profit to FPO, you have to work it out, and it serves as a guide in building a portfolio of activities which the company takes. So Sachin and I were looking at this and we said, let's measure it. So we looked at MSP groundnut in 1918 to 1919. It turned out that 1 rupee invested or earned by the FPO resulted in 22.5 rupees to the individual farmer. What a fantastic leverage ratio. But it was not the same for all commodities. So when we looked at potato contract farming, the ratio was 7.2. Cattle feed, the ratio was even less, 3.2. But there is another thing to note here. They start with pilot project and then they scale up each time. The ratio changes from pilot to scaled up. So for instance, in potato, the pilot stage it was 2.9. When it scaled up by 4 times, it became 7.2. So the potential for scaling up and the potential for changing this ratio also has to be factored in, plus the risk factor. All these things have to be factored in by the management. Financial, last one. So in financial performance, it is more important to note, and partly reflected by the figures which Professor Shambhu was saying also, that these companies are looking for financial resilience and not profitability. And bankers don't understand this. Why is financial resilience important? Because they want this organization to last as long as it can, because the services which they get are most critical for turning around their livelihoods. They value the services much more than profitability or dividends. They don't care for dividends. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing good job in limited time. May I invite Naveen Bhai now to talk about Andana, the gold PC from Madhya Pradesh.
Thank you. So, Naveen from AKRSP, Control Support Program. As such, we have promoted several FPOs, but we have picked up this particular case study, the Pandana Pashupalan Producers Company Limited, with a particular reason, because they were doing something different, which none of our other FPOs are doing. So, while our other FPOs might have much more turnover, profitability, membership, this one was small but different. So, this is the area in Madhya Pradesh, classical rain-fed tribal region, where farmers generally grow only one crop in a year. And we had done a Nabad Wadi project in that area with only 500 farmers. So, in 2016, Nabad came out with this idea that why don't we form the FPO of these Wadi farmers, which we promoted under our project. But when we looked at Wadis, their output was not that high that it was a viable producers organization. So then we went back to them and said that why don't we do something different, not look at the Wadis, but there are other opportunities like organizing the goat rearers rather than looking at this guava and other produce which was there, which was very small in volume actually. So that is where, and we said that if we organize goat rearers, we can solve a very prominent problem which farmers were facing. So, for example, in small livestock, the veterinary care is almost absent. So, if you go below the block level, there are hardly any veterinary services available from the government side. There is, in tribal area, in fact, you hardly find any person who is posted there in that veterinary hospital. So, and whenever they are there, they provide services only to larger livestock. So basically buffalo and cows and hogs, but not to the goats and backyard poultry. So that is why we thought that it is actually solving the problem of a sector which is neglected, which is generally run by tribal women. It is a rain-fed area. So we thought, let's pick up this thing and we form a FPO. So and the baseline said that the mortality in goats were almost around 38%. In poultry, it was more than 55%. Just because there were no preventive veterinary care services, no better feeding, those kind of absent services. So we tried organizing this thing. So initial idea was just to create paravets in the form of Pashu Sakhis, to provide deworming vaccinations, some management practices to these tribal women, and that led to significant improvement in terms of reduction in the mortality rates. But then we found that they were becoming dependent on AKRSP in terms of, like, we were procuring dewormers, we were procuring vaccinations and giving it to Pashu Sakhis, and they were delivering the services on ground. We thought, why don't we organize them into a FPO? That was the basic idea. So in 30 villages with 500 women, the FPO largely runs on the energy and dedication of these paravets. So these are like Pashu Sakhis, they provide the services in terms of vaccinations, deworming, feed, they sell the feed. They also facilitate the sale of output in terms of facilitation between the traders and the farmers. So what happens is, let us say in terms of financial performance, the turnover looks very small because the turnover is coming, which is coming on the balance sheet is just on the input side. Actually, they are doing a lot of work which is not on the balance sheet. So, like, they facilitate the transaction between the trader and the farmer in terms of output. So they facilitate sale of bucks by weighing the bucks, and that actually helps farmers in terms of better rates. So those kind of work which are facilitated by FPO people is not coming on balance sheet. That's why it looks like 30 lakhs, and last financial year they could do, I think, 56, 57 lakhs of turnover. And this year actually they will cross 1 crore rupees. But it is still profitable because they are earning margin on the input services which they are providing to their farmers. That is one thing. Because so one is the profit on the input side. Second is the governance. So while there are self-help groups in the villages which are serviced by these Pashu Sakhis, actually the governance is all captured or governed by these Pashu Sakhis themselves. So 10 among them are the board of directors. So they are kind of service providers, or you can call them village agent. But the reality is that whole of this business is run by these women who are paravets. While women who are on the ground, they are gaining knowledge, they get products, they could sell their produce, and they also participate in terms of AGMs and monthly meetings. But the governance is somehow, because in the initial years, only Pashu Sakhis were knowledgeable in that area. So they became the board of directors and they remain board of directors. So in a way there is conflict. I mean, they are also service providers, but they are also the governing members, while there are shareholders, other shareholders also. So that is, I think, one of the challenge. Second thing is, what they are trying to do is remarkable in terms of highly unorganized sector, where, let us say, if we want to transport 10 bucks from one area to other area, there are a lot of regulations which comes in. So you have to vaccinate the goats. There are some space norms. In a particular vehicle, you cannot transport more than a certain number of bucks or animals. But in informal economy or informal traders, they need not to follow any rules. In a vehicle which can hold only 10 bucks, they can transport 20, 30, 40 bucks without vaccination, without any certification. While a formal organization will not be able to do all these things. So that is where I think they did not find it remunerative to transport animals to larger places. Rather, they are now focusing on the local market in terms of, now they have set up retail meat shops, and that is much more profitable. So while the volume as of now is low, but in terms of profits, I mean, just from these retail meat shops, they are able to generate good amount of profit, which suffice in terms of their day-to-day expenses. The new thing recently, or last year they have done is they have set up now a hatchery for desi poultry birds, and that is becoming a big business in a way, because it is not a kind of broiler hatchery, but it is for desi chicken, where the demand is for smallholders. Sometimes they want only 20 chicks, 30 chicks, 15 chicks. But in the broiler system, you need to give a certain volume, then only it works. So here what happens is, women, if they come to weekly hearts and they need even 10 chicks, this hatchery is able to provide them, which is a good service. Like someone wants 15 chicks, 20 chicks, this hatchery is always ready to provide this kind of services to real smallholders who want to just rear chicks for maybe their food security or in backyard. And some of them really want to do commercial ones, that is also welcome. So these are new things. They have a hatchery, they have leased out a place now where they can keep bugs for a certain period of time before they can transport the aggregated numbers of bugs to larger markets. So in a way, this FPO basically fulfills a kind of absent services which were not there to the mainstream service providers. And now they are trying to more organize the unorganized kind of trade which happens in goats and poultry. But despite all these things, they are growing, they are profitable. This last financial years, their turnover was 57 lakhs. This year they are targeting more than 1 crore because of this hatchery and new services. And now they are also trying to bring in the business which is off the balance sheet to their balance sheet, so that it can be further organized and formalized. So that is how this whole thing is working. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen bhai. I think this is a very challenging thing. One, that you're working in a market which is informal. Second, it's meat. Third, it's women's producer company. I have also studied this, so I'm quite impressed with the kind of challenges which have been addressed and so on. Thank you very much for bringing those insights into play. Now may I ask Sachin bhai to talk about Gujpro.
Thank you, Supal. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Shambhu to give us this opportunity, because the original idea was just to, I believe, document the primary producer companies, and then we came up with the idea, since that we have these 3 state-level federations, why not also document their experiences? So I think there was a very good blend of how the association between the primary federations have there, and some kind of linkages that are happening in these 3 states, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. So, and I would like to thank Abhishek and Kuldeep, for, because this whole case study has been documented with their support. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Gujpro, just a minute on the genesis. So Gujpro was actually formed by Sajjata Sangh, which was formed by DSC. So DSC came into being in 94 and Sajjata came in 2002, and then we had the Sajjata Sangh is a network of NGOs in Gujarat. Premesh, the CEO, is also here, and those these NGOs were actually doing watershed management, and then they moved out to what our founder chair Anil Bhai said, Watershed Plus. And DSC as a support organization was supporting them. So they came together and formed Sajjata Sangh. And this Sajjata Sangh members who were doing watershed, they realized that in order to sustain the incomes of farmers, you needed to get into agriculture, sustainable agriculture and enterprise. So that is how they formed these FPOs, much before the FPO movement came. And Krishidan was one of the first FPOs. It's an incarnated version of what we did in Dari. So Dari was earlier formed in 2005, and then Krishidan came in 2013. So similarly, NGOs like the Deepak Foundation and others, the partners of Sajjata Sangh, had formed FPOs. But they were struggling on various fronts, struggling on how to develop a business plan, struggling on marketing of their produce, struggling on credit. And therefore, we realized that within the ambit of these NGOs, who were largely, they had a different mindset. Their DNA was very different than a profit-making FPO. So we needed a setup at the state level which could cater to those demands, of creating an enabling environment, marketing support. And therefore, in this, I'm very happy in this EMA, we had, we had SFAC person, Pravesh Sharma ji and others coming here, and we discussed what were the issues with the FPOs that were being promoted, and it was felt that let us try out an informal network. So we formed a network which was informal, and then we got it registered in 2014. So that is how Gujpro came into being. Kuldeep, who was with Sajjata Sangh, he was the CEO of Sajjata, then decided, because he had this inherent risk-taking, this thing ability, so he became the CEO of, he said, okay, Sajjata Sangh network, NGO you manage, I want to get into this business part. And that is how he took over as the CEO of Gujpro, and that is how the journey started. So from 2014 onwards, it has been a kind of a roller coaster ride for Gujpro. The MSP till 19 saw a huge jump. It reached 186 crores in 1 year. It had this huge jump and a huge slump also. The jump was followed by a slump, and because the government decided that the FPOs are getting too big for their boots, and therefore suddenly we had an order. We said that sorry, no FPOs. So all the FPO members, primary FPOs, and Abhishek and I visited a few members, and they said that the first time they scaled up their operations was thanks to Sajjata and Gujpro. They got this taste of scaling up MSP at large scale because of Gujpro. But 2019, suddenly there was a change in policy, and therefore the FPOs who had great balance sheet, including Krushidan, could not sustain that because the FPOs were not allowed. So if you look at what has happened is that then it has got into a lot of, the groundnut value chain is something that Gujpro specializes in. It has done blanched peanuts, it has gone into pods, and you name anything in groundnut oil. So anything on groundnuts you want to look at, consult Gujpro. It's done some fabulous work, but it also proved to be a bane for Gujpro, because the two major players, one government player failed to give money on time, so they had a problem, and one private player, they got into fair trade also. So it was a B2B model, B2C model that they tried out, but unfortunately what happened is the private fellow also became bankrupt. So suddenly Gujpro was forced to have or face huge amount of losses, because both the government and the private, none was better. So it was a kind of a devil and the deep blue sea kind of situation for Gujpro. But still the members remain. And I'm very happy to tell you that originally there were 10 FPOs and they had promoted with 1 lakh rupees, and SFSC had provided some 10 lakhs. That was the only money that they had. And after that, it's now almost 10 years. In 24, 10 years of Gujpro will be celebrating. It has grown on its own. From 10 to 36 members now, across I think 16 districts. So it has a varied set of commodities, from groundnut to seeds to spices, and occasionally mangoes also, to Irma and others. It's also started a very good retail shop called Satvik. Unfortunately it failed because of COVID and it could not sustain. But Gujpro has tried out various models, the B2B model and the B2C also kind of thing. And largely the FPOs, so the FPOs trust Gujpro. So very strong network, in spite of the losses, in spite of the problems, the members have grown there. So to conclude, what I realized is that when we were documenting this case, Gujarat had these primary FPOs and suddenly a state level FPO, but nothing in between. So you have the primary FPOs who are federated to Gujpro, but the situation was much more complex, because Gujpro had to balance between Saurashtra and South Gujarat, or between Saurashtra and say Kutch or North Gujarat. So groundnut, it was a kind of, in South Gujarat is also there, but there were certain commodities which Gujpro could not. It did some value change for pomegranates and others, but it could not really take it up because it had to balance, and it had no staff. Virtually it was working without much staff or much resources. So it had to pick up something which was common to all, and therefore in that balance it could not do justice to all the FPOs. And yet if you realize that if you leave the primary FPOs on their own, they could not have scaled up. And therefore, just to kind of broadly think, we strongly feel that if the FPOs, primary FPOs are left on their own, yes, 2 minutes, I'll just take 2 minutes, they will not survive. Anything beyond the incubation period of 3 to 5 years, these primary FPOs are not going to survive unless they are federated into commodity federations at the cluster level. So we strongly, so Gujarat is going back now. Having the primary FPO and a state level federation, it is now forming in Banaskantha and others, it is forming a cluster level federation, right? With Reliance and others, it is forming a cluster level federation, for specific commodities. Because you need that second tier in between the primary FPO and the state level one, you need a cluster, a commodity based cluster level federation in between. So that can give you the economies of scale, that can sort out a lot of the issues that Gujarat also faced, So the cluster level federations are pretty critical. So these FPOs which are there, the 8, 10, 12 FPOs, and Odisha has a very good model. The Odisha Millet Mission actually supports not only the primary FPO but the cluster level federations also. I was there for a week in Odisha studying those CLFs. The CLFs are doing a wonderful job, and those members of the CLFs are becoming members of the FPO. They are the board members. Those women who are involved in the Millet Mission are actually members of some great FPOs done in Odisha. A similar model I think is necessary in Gujarat, where a lot of money is pumped into the FPO level, but nothing at the cluster federations because they are not formed, and the state level federation. There is no money for Gujarat to survive. So whatever profits or losses it makes, it manages on its own with a very scarce staff. So if you want to make these FPOs sustainable, if you want them to scale up, then you need money to be pumping for at least 5 to 7 years for the cluster level federation and for the state level federation, if you want them to survive, scale up and become sustainable.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this idea to the table, which has been there for some time, at what level we should set up these entities. Yes, Dr. Ajit Kanikar to talk about another state federated PC, that is Maha. No? Yeah.
Good morning everyone. 15 seconds about my personal association with Gujarat state and this city and 100 kilometers Anand. I started my first job after my marriage when I was unemployed. Opposite this road, which is IMA, as a research associate. Dinesh Bhai is here, one of the senior members from EDII, Entrepreneurship Institute. Subsequently, I had the benefit to get his guidance. And under Tushar's direction, when he was the director, I sort of first came to know about what cooperative or mandali is during my first field work. And then, just for the sake of history, the producer company, the first working paper came from IRMA by Professor Ajay Dubey, which studied and wrote about cooperative companies in dairy in New Zealand, 1992 working paper. And now we are in 2023, and then ALAC committee and all that. So it's a 31-year history for the cooperative companies. Now we are calling as producer companies, and of course my journey. My FPC is an interesting organization as a federation. 600 plus members when we studied. Of course now they are 800 plus now. Primary FPCs all across Maharashtra, Western Maharashtra, Marathwada, Vidarbha, Northern Maharashtra. So region wise it's really a true representative. Works in commodity clusters, largely onions, which is Western Maharashtra, pulses, which is Marathwada region, the central Maharashtra, and soybean, which is Vidarbha largely, but also part of Marathwada, which is Latur, Parbhani, Usmanabad, Nanded, Parbhani, and so on and so forth. So commodity based, cluster based, and therefore large inclusiveness in that sense of the term. It is promoted by promoters who sort of saw the limitations of the individual FPC. I think that's very important. Because the promoters and the lead person now, Mr. Yogesh and his team, actually started with FPCs in and around Pune district, and therefore they knew what FPCs individually can do and cannot do. Cannot do, I emphasize a little more, and therefore they said that we need an apex a superstructure which will actually overcome the limitations of scale and the kind of size that an individual small FPC has in terms of its business outreach, membership and so on and so forth. Their business model is interesting. They work largely on the MSP, and we heard from Sachin Bhai that MSP is like a switch on and off. That this year the government decides to have MSP and then suddenly there is a spike because then MSP procurement, everybody gets into action and then you have a large business on your balance sheet, and next year the government decides MSP switch is off and then suddenly there is no business activity. What I found in our study in MyFPC is that they are trying to, I use the word trying to, they're trying to use the MSP model fully knowing well that it is going to be a tricky on and off switch which is unreliable, therefore their FPCs are vulnerable, but their logic all through these 9 years, they started in 2014, is to build the MSP experience, to build capacities internally. I repeat it. They said as MyFPC, we will do the last mile quote unquote dirty job which the existing NAFEDs and the procurement agencies of the state government are not able to do. MSP announcement is Delhi is one thing. You get claps and you get headlines in ET and financial newspapers. MSP on ground is a dirty job. You have to open procurement centers, you have to have weighing machines, you have to have a storage place, you have to have a quality assessor, you have to ensure that gunny bags are there, you have to ensure that transport is there, you have to ensure that warehouses are booked, and you have to ensure that all what is received is weighed well, is measured well, is quality assessed well, and farmers are paid in time and on as per this thing. This is the MSP dirty operation. I quote unquote dirty. Nobody is willing to do that. State federations have given up. Here is where the MyFPC, the Maharashtra Federation and its associated FPCs step in to do this last mile connectivity, and they fully know well that MSP this next year cannot happen, but they use this to build their capacity in terms of ensuring that the operating capabilities of the FPC members are built in terms of all the quote unquote dirty operations that I described, and there could be another 10 list of activities that need to be done. Accounting is one, transparency is one. Farmers have no trust. Farmers have no trust in ensuring that their items will be picked in time, on time. MSP is announced in July, August. Centers are not open till November, December. What do they do after harvest? Here they step in. So the question that one needs to ask about MyFPC and the federation in general is that what is the value that they add to their individual members? We have seen in sugar cooperatives in Maharashtra that the Apex Federation is sitting in 20-story multiple AC offices in Nariman Point, and the primaries, the sugar cooperatives are going to dogs. Sorry to say that. The primary, the members are not profitable, but how can the Apex be profitable? There is completely some gadbad in this reverse logic. Here interestingly, MyFPC is profitable, doing a good business, and their ambition is to use this MSP experience over last 8 years to switch on to private sector operations. So you have the ADMs type in soya, and you have the large pulse dal mill operators. So you use the MSP dal procurement experience with the government, with the NAFED, and overall at the end of 2, 3, 4 years, build capacities in individual FPCs in Latur, in Marathwada, in Vidarbha region, so that FPCs have option to go the MSP way, or FPCs have option to go to the private sector way if they want, given the price differential. So that is the value addition, that is the kind of capacity building that the federation is trying to do. MyFPC has excellent MIS record. They ensure that they have about 150,000 members. Sitting in their office in Pune, actually one can track, I see them tracking individual farmer disbursement, XYZ farmer, ABC village, LMN crop, so much procurement happened on so and so date, T+7, T+9, T+11 money has been deposited through the DBT route. All that has helped them to build the trust, but they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable, as I said, because of the MSP operation. They also do quite a bit of policy advocacy, which is very important for the federation. Maharashtra, unlike Gujarat, is a very politically hot state in terms of the alignments. I won't comment on that. But there are entrenched lobbies of all parties. And of course the party and the government in power, whether this or that, would ensure that all these MSP and the allied schemes are kind of targeted to their constituencies, quote unquote, which are supporting them. And therefore it becomes extremely difficult to sort of work with this dynamic political economy, win friends across the parties but also the bureaucracy. Because bureaucracy also is not just in the government, but bureaucracy also is in the state federation, which have traditionally been given responsibility of procurement and working with farmers, but we have seen consistently across state that they have not lived up to their mark as per the kind of data and the research that one has done. And therefore, it's for the Maha FPC, and they have done it reasonably well to sort of balance this political, commercial, social dimension and sort of trying to be politically neutral, especially in last 4 years. We have seen different kinds of combinations. Ensure that systems are built not just in their own federation office, which is a lean office by the way. They are not sitting with 100 people. They are just about 14-15 people. Their FPCs are quite strong. FPC balance sheets are quite strong in the range of 60 lakhs to 1 crore per FPC. It leaves them a surplus even at a 2% or 2.5% service charge, quote unquote commission on the MSP that they do. It leaves them with a balance of 10, 15, 20 lakh. Maha Onion is their latest initiative about which we have written in the book, which is essentially building up about 20 warehouse facilities. Through that, then warehouse receipts, then through that participate again in NCDX related activities. So you build systems, you build capacities in terms of doing operations, you operate at policy level, you build volumes, you gain visibility, you gain a market share. And just to conclude, when I was in IRMA that time, NDDB had this Dhara operation, what they call as market intervention operation, and many of you would remember that jingle, Dhara Dhara Shuddha Dhara. Now the question was that how much is that critical mass, so that if you have that critical mass, even of 5%, 10%, 15%, you are able to influence the market. I think Maha FPC is going in that way, that in soya, in dal, may not be in onion, because onion has a different kind of price behavior, but at least in soya and dal, pulses, if they are able to continue with these volumes, I think they have a fairly good chance of working with the farmers, ensuring that the price benefit actually accrues in terms of its transfer to the prices. Inclusiveness, gender, they are very weak. They don't, it's all men's land, it's all men's cooperative, it's all men's board, and probably they need to do a lot of work. So kudos to them in terms of what they have gained, but really in a very, very vulnerable environment in terms of politics, business, prices, and one really hopes that this organization is able to thrive and continue to work toward the betterment of Maharashtra farmers and set up a model. Because once these 5,000, 10,000 FPCs come, which is a better way of federating, I think Maha FPC is one way to have this kind of ideal or close to ideal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jit. Friends, you have got a snapshot of the micro and macro scenario for Gujarat in a detailed manner with 3 cases and also something from Maharashtra.